Good evening, everybody. Thanks for attending the meeting of this Planning Committee on the 15th of August 2023. My name is Councillor June Molyneux. I'm Chair of the Committee. Councillor Alex Hilton is Vice Chair. Please note that the meeting is also being streamed live on YouTube. If you're in attendance as a member of the public who's registered to speak, please note that you have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish speaking, otherwise your microphone will be muted. For ease in following the evening's proceedings, a pack's been prepared and it's available online that contains each item's report, plans, presentations, slides and any addendum. After officers have presented the reports and any speakers have made their representations, I'll invite members to make any comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to do so. When invited to speak, please turn on your microphone and turn it off when you've finished speaking. When speaking, please reference the paragraph number to enable everyone to follow you. Please, can everybody ensure that their phones are turned off or turned to silent? Well, look at that, everybody dives for their pockets. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in, it's real. Apologies have been received tonight from Councillor Samir Khan and Alistair Morwood, with Councillor Adrian Lowe substituting for one of those. With that, I've done apologies. Declarations of any interests. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters concerning the agenda. If you have such an interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you would leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare such an interest in item 3G. My property has a boundary within the application site and I'll leave committee at that point.
Okay. It's the meeting Tuesday the 13th of June. Will somebody move those minutes, please? Thank you. Somebody second them. All those in favour? We'll do that one that way. It's all right. Item 3, planning applications to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for planning applications as follows. The officers will summarise the report and registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order. Objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or their agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I may grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. With that, we'll move straight on to item 3A. Euxton Mills Hotel, Wigan Road, Euxton, Chorley, pages 5 to 18 on your agendas. My council will present this item. The officer recommendation is for planning permission granted subject to conditions, and I have one registered speaker, the applicant Paul Bowker. Mike, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to the Euxton Mills Hotel Public House, located at the junction of Wigan Road and Daubers Lane in Euxton. The public house is a traditional white rendered building with a car park and outdoor seating areas to the west and south, with access points to and from both roads. The application seeks planning permission, retrospectively, for the erection of a covered area of raised decking within the car park, located in the southeast corner of the site. It has a footprint of 6 by 5 metres and has a mono-pitched roof with a maximum height of 2.6 metres. The decking is raised 0.25 metres off the ground and has a 1 metre high balustrade to its frontage. 6 neighbour objections have been received, citing issues including noise and loss of parking spaces. 30 letters of support have been received. Technical consultees have raised no objection to the proposal, with the exception of the Council's Environmental Health Officer, who has raised some concerns should music be played on the decking area. In terms of impact on the street scene, the structure is set back from the highway and is modest in terms of scale and appearance. Given its location and the surrounding land uses, it is not considered to be detrimental to the street scene or surrounding locality, and as such, does not form a discordant or harmful feature. In terms of the impact on residential amenity, there is a row of terraced properties located directly to the south of the decking area. The gable end of the nearest dwelling is located 4.7 metres away and is separated by an access road. Whilst the gable end of the dwelling has a side-facing window, the covered decking area is not of a sufficient scale to result in an overbearing impact. Furthermore, given that the structure has a semi-solid rear elevation, it improves the situation with regards to privacy that was previously experienced where patrons of the public house had direct views towards the dwelling. It's noted that concerns relating to noise have been raised by several objectors in relation to the application. However, the local planning authority must be mindful that the public house is well established and can be seen on historic mapping in the late 19th century before surrounding dwellings existed. The use of the car park for congregation and drinking took place prior to the erection of the covered decking area and would not in itself require planning permission. It is not considered that the covered decking area would notably increase impact upon residential amenity over and above the previous situation, subject to its use being restricted to drinking and eating between the hours of 8 AM to 10 PM and to prohibit the playing of music. Should the council receive complaints of noise from the decking area or other areas, there are alternative mechanisms and legislation under which this can be investigated and potentially controlled. The erection of the raised decking has resulted in the loss of a small amount of parking at the site. However, the Highways Authority have been consulted on the proposal and do not consider that it results in a detrimental impact on highway safety or amenity, with sufficient parking retained to meet demand. Accordingly, the proposal is recommended for approval subject to conditions.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to see me. I just wanted to explain the decking really. I was quite surprised when there was objections. It was built mainly for the lockdown outdoor trading period, because obviously we had to be outside. And we've used it on 6 occasions for live music, never past 9 o'clock in the evening. And now we've gone to 7 o'clock and it's only special events such as King's Coronation, Queen's Jubilee, anniversaries of us taking the pub. So we've done it quite tastefully. But the main function is for people to go outside and drink and eat on it. And I have been closing it at 10 o'clock in the evening out of respect for the neighbours. There are no speakers up there anymore. I took them down once I got the first complaint nearly 2 years ago. In hindsight, maybe I should have approached the council for planning permission, but the builder who erected the structure was fairly adamant that planning permission wasn't needed for it because of the size. But some advice might have been advised to be taken earlier. Apologies for that. And that's about it, really. It's just a decking area where people have a few drinks and a bite to eat. Nothing major. But thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor G, Councillor Ainsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Seems a long time since we've been hitting here.
Oh, doesn't it? June.
Yes, this is a local pub, community pub. It's had its, not problem, but it has its problems with COVID and that's same as the other ones. We've had pubs shut down in Euxton. This is we've got 3 pubs at the moment, one to the north, one to the south, and the Talbot, which I think is to the east, I'm not quite sure. There is decking out there, or not decking, but there is outside seating area. Personally, I can't see a problem with it. It's well maintained, well kept. As I said, it's a community pub, it's a local pub, and the only concern I've got is some of the parking, but most of the people that go there are people that would walk anyway. I've never known problems with people parking down Dunrobin Drive or anywhere else around there. So I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor G. Councillor Ainsworth.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second what Councillor G has said. From looking at the application as well, I think the decking does it does look improved from the back, and it does improve the area.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm led to believe by the residents that, provided the conditions that we've stipulated from the council are adhered to, they're quite happy with it.
Okay. Anyone else wish to comment, or shall we move to anything different to say?
No, I drive past it regularly at times when the pub's supposedly busy, and I go in, and I don't go in, but the car park, there's always spaces, you know, sometimes I have to turn around there, and I always get space to turn around in the car park, so I don't see why people need to overflow and go out the sides of that. And as well, there's never blaring music, and it's not the sort of pub that has blaring music, so it's just, again, with everyone else, I don't see what the issue is.
Okay, are we all finished? If so, I'll move to the vote, please. Yeah, and it takes a while, yeah. Councillor Whittaker's voted.
Thank you, Chair. Members have
Phil.
voted unanimously to approve the application.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item, if anybody's come just for that application, please feel free. Thank you. Item 3B, Lower House, Fold Farm, Trigg Lane, Heapey, pages 29 to 60. Mike's going to present this item. The recommendation is planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I have no registered speakers. Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is situated in the green belt to the north of Trigg Lane, which is accessed from Brinscall Mill Road, situated approximately 1.5 kilometres south-east of Wealton and 1.2 kilometres south-west of Brinscall. They're situated in a rural locality surrounded by open fields, other than a cluster of dwellings and stable buildings located immediately to the north and a further building to the south. The site slopes gently downwards from north-east to south-west. Approximately 1/3 of the application site is covered by buildings in a poor state of repair, most recently used for the breaking and salvaging of vehicles, storage, and to a lesser extent, stabling of horses. The site is currently harmful to the visual amenity and character of the area due to its unsightly appearance with scrap vehicles and other items scattered across the site. The application site is located approximately 12 metres to the south of the Grade 2 listed Lower Housefold Farm with adjoining barn. Members may recall that outline planning permission was refused by the committee in February 2022 for residential development at the site. An indicative layout plan for that development identified 9 dwellings stretching across the application site. The application was considered by officers and the planning committee to represent inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and not a sustainable location for up to 9 dwellings. The applicant now seeks full planning permission for the erection of 4 detached dwellings and garages following the demolition of the existing buildings. The applicant has attempted to overcome the reason for refusal of the previous application by reducing the number of proposed dwellings. The submitted plans have also been revised during the consideration period of the application by further reducing the scheme from 5 to 4 dwellings, reducing the scale of the dwellings, and removing any built development other than the internal access road and a pond from the southern section of the site. Members may recall that following the refusal of the previous application, Planning Committee approved an application for 3 dwellings following the demolition of equestrian buildings in July 2022 on land to the north-east of the application site. A full assessment of the proposal is contained in the committee report, and members will note that officers do not consider that the proposed development is unacceptable in the Greenbelt. This is due to the proposed reduced scheme meeting an exception within the framework for the redevelopment of previously developed land. 3 representations have been received in objection to the proposal, raising issues that include damage and unsustainability of the access road and an increase in traffic. There are no outstanding objections to the scheme from technical consultees, subject to conditions that include a pre- and post-condition survey of the access road to ensure any damage caused during the construction of the proposal is repaired by the developer. Whilst the proposal would give rise to some harm to the setting of the listed building, it is considered that the benefits of improving the visual appearance of the site and the delivery of housing where the council currently has a shortfall outweigh this harm. The officer recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Over to you, members. Thank you, Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. Just one comment. It says here that the access road is unadopted. Part of Brinscombe Mill Road, the first 100 metres, is adopted, as myself and Councillor Snape found out about 2 years ago. If you go on Lancashire County Council's website, it will say it isn't, but the paper records that David Good got tells us it's adopted. I think they're called Bluebell Cottages, 2 semi-detached cottages, and there's an oak tree, and that is the boundary. So it is actually adopted up till there, and in the days of Councillor Keith Eden, we've had it repaired and so forth. So that's just a matter of clarity, but don't really have a problem with this application and would like to propose go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the pictures of these, I think it can only get better. I mean, it looks in very poor condition, the area. It'll make the place a lot better, and I'm more than happy to second the officer's recommendation.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair. I don't really have an issue with the application. I support it. I think we just need to be careful about agreeing to build in a green belt because there's an eyesore there. I think there are other reasons that have been clearly put in the report by the officers to state that that's appropriate, but there have been a few comments that it's a bit of an eyesore there, and that's not a reason for building in the green belt, but the rest of it I will accept and I support the application. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll bow to Councillor France's superior knowledge when it comes to access roads. It's obviously been well researched by himself and the late Councillor Ridden. Initially, the refusal we gave was 2 tenths, to be honest with you. And I think the proposal that goes forward seems to fit with the area. Completely agree with Vice Chair that it's not a reason to build on the Greenbelt because it's an eyesore as it is now. But I think the scheme as presented and as laid out fits the bill, and I'll be agreeing with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Please. No. We believe you, Councillor Whittaker. It's wonderful technology when it works.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve the application.
With an update on your addendum. Oh, I forgot to switch it on. Mike's going to present this item. And the recommendation remains that outline planning permission granted subject to conditions as outlined. I've a registered speaker, the agent Brian Euxton. Right, Mike, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is situated in the green belt off Wood Lane in a rural part of the parish of Mawdesley. The site contains 5 former agricultural buildings that are mostly in a poor state of repair, with some in use for storage under permitted development rights, following the Council's granting of a prior approval application to change the use from agriculture to storage in February 2022. Outline planning permission is sought for the development of the existing buildings and the erection of up to 3 dwellings with all matters reserved, save for access from Wood Lane. To the south-east are 2 adjoining brick-built barns that form an L shape and a much smaller detached brick outbuilding. Planning permission has recently been granted for the change of use of these buildings to a dwelling and an associated outbuilding. Land to the northwest, northeast and further to the southeast consist of open agricultural fields. There are detached dwellings to the south on the opposite side of Wood Lane. A full assessment of the proposal is contained in the committee report, and members will note that officers do not consider the proposed development as unacceptable in the Greenbelt. This is due to the proposed scheme meeting an exception within the framework for the redevelopment of previously developed land. As this is an outline application with all matters reserved other than access, the site layout, landscaping, scale and appearance of the site are not yet known, and so related impacts from these aspects will have to be assessed as part of a future reserved matters application. 2 representations have been received in objection to the proposal, raising issues that include highway safety and drainage. There are no outstanding objections to the scheme from technical consultees subject to conditions that include limiting the volume and scale of the future dwellings, the submission of a drainage scheme for agreement with the local planning authority, and securing ecological mitigation measures. The opposite recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement as outlined in the main report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Brian Euxton.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to input to the meeting. I'm Brian Euxton on behalf of the planning agents. The site historically formed part of Wood Lane Farm. It was farmed under a very old style agricultural tenancy until about 2 years ago, when the then farmer surrendered the tenancy. Since then, the applicants have been using part of the site for storage of materials associated with their properties. The adjoining barn recently received consent to be converted into an impressive single dwelling, and indicative layout plans submitted with the current application show how the houses could sit alongside that barn conversion. Although the applicants were advised that the site could physically house more than the 3 detached dwellings, after looking at a number of illustrative drawings, they felt that due to the surroundings and the character of the area, the site would be better suited to less dwellings, in fact. There will also be a limit on volume in accordance with the existing buildings. However, there is ample volume to create the proposed illustrative dwellings with excess. As this application is outline only, however, all the design is to be approved at reserved matter stage, so the council still has the opportunity to approve all of that. The applicants made some minor changes to the plans in accordance with highway suggestions. It's recognised that residential use, however, will result in smaller vehicles accessing the site, and therefore there's a small highways gain. The proposal will provide a small but important contribution to housing in the area, boosting supply on a brownfield site. The impact upon the openness of the countryside will be very limited and arguably reduced from that existing. Development of a high-quality small group of quality houses will enhance rather than detract from the area. Accordingly, as all matters have been addressed and we consider the proposal is policy compliant, we respectfully request that the application is approved this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. Strange enough, I was down there on Sunday. The buildings as presented have fallen into some state of repair, and development down there would probably be in its interest. I'm pleased to see that they've kept the development small, subject to conditions and obviously approval of various designs, particularly around, I should be looking to ecology and particularly drainage for where it is, but I don't see a problem with that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor France.
I'm prepared to second these officers' recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, I will move to the vote. Okay, please. Tracked it.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application for planning permission subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement.
Okay, if anybody's come just for that item and they wish to leave, please feel free. Moving on to item 3D, the Latvian Consulate, Pemberton House, Charnock Richard, pages 91 to 108 with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. The officer's recommendation remains reserved matters consent for granted for details of appearance, and I have no registered speakers. Adele.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. This application seeks reserved matters consent for the landscaping of the development pursuant to a previously approved outline application, which was for the erection of 6 detached houses following the demolition of the existing dwelling and stables building. The application site is occupied by a large dwelling house and stables, and it's located in the green belt at Charnock Richard, opposite the Park Hall complex, and it is previously developed land. The dwelling is presently unoccupied and in a severe state of disrepair following fire damage, bouts of vandalism and general neglect. The proposed landscaping is comprehensive and would provide a strong buffer with the main highway at Parkhall Road, whilst creating an attractive and verdant entry into the development. The communal open space to the north would provide informal parkland, whilst there would be a more formal garden aesthetic around the dwellings themselves. The proposed landscaping would build on some of the existing characteristics of the site, maintaining the higher quality trees, and would provide an attractive, high quality setting to the development. It is therefore recommended that this Reserve Matters application is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Whittaker.
Parish Council.
It's on. It's done it. We've done it, Ken. We did it from up here.
Sorry. Beg your pardon. In the report it said that Charnock Parish Council do not object, and they don't. But at a meeting of the Parish Council last week, reference was made to the fairly intimidating fencing on the front, which fronts onto Parkhall Road. It's not shown on the plans there. All I would ask is that I think it's within the height restriction. It's a question of whether it restricts the highway improvement. So before permission is sent off, I'd be grateful if officers could check that it doesn't impinge on the highway, Chair. Okay. Thank you.
Certainly, okay. Councillor G. Do you want to say anything? No. Councillor G.
Thanks, Chair. This has been before the planning committee before, and we passed it, and I'm more than happy. But I take Councillor Whittaker's point there about the fencing. It is if it's not in keeping with the area, I'm quite happy. I think we should look at it. So we could get those conditions. I'll be happy to second it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please. Yep, done it.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application, subject to conditions.
Item, anybody's come for that, please feel free to go. Item 3E is Mayfield, Bluestone Lane, Mawdesley, pages 109 to 142. Adele's going to present this item. The recommendation is planning permission is granted subject to conditions. And I have two registered speakers, the objector Simon Miskell and the agent Alistair Skelton. Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of two detached dwellings and garages on land to the south of Mayfield in Mawdesley, and is a resubmission of a recently refused scheme. Members may recall that the previous application was presented to committee back in March of this year and was refused as it was considered to be as the proposal was considered to be out of keeping with the character of the street frontage. This current application has reduced the ridge heights of the proposed dwellings. The accommodation in the roof space has been removed and a street scene drawing has been submitted in support of the proposal. The application site is located in the Green Belt and comprises open garden land between Mayfield to the north and the garden area of Bluestone Barn to the south. The National Planning Policy Framework and Local Plan do allow for limited infilling in villages in the Green Belt, and the application site is considered to form part of the functional area of the village of Mawdesley. The site itself lies within a frontage of development along Bluestone Lane, with buildings to either side, and is considered to meet the definition of infill development. It is also noted that permission in principle was granted on appeal for a single dwelling at this site in July 2022, and that remains extant. The planning inspector concluded that the site met the definition of limited infilling in a village, and as such, this proposal is considered to be acceptable in principle. In consideration of the impact on character, the site is capable of supporting two dwellings at a density reflective of other examples in the locality. The proposed dwellings would face the highway and would be of a design and scale not uncommon to the area, whilst the heights would be reflective of other nearby building heights as demonstrated by the street scene drawing. The outbuildings would be appropriately positioned and of appropriate design and scale, making use of an existing structure for the gatehouse. As such, there would be no significant detrimental impact on the appearance of the site or the character of the area. The positioning of the dwellings is such that there would be no unacceptably adverse impacts on the amenity of nearby residential occupiers. In addition, there would be no adverse ecological impacts from the development subject to the provision of landscaping and biodiversity enhancement details, whilst a detailed surface water drainage scheme would be required by condition. The local highway authority have confirmed that they have no objections subject to the provision of a construction traffic management plan, which is recommended to be secured by condition as well. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan, and it is recommended for approval subject to the conditions that are set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Simon, would you like to speak?
Good evening, Chair, thanks. I think it's just some context that when it was original bungalow, there was no objection from any of the residents because that was quite proportionate to turn one house into two. It's in proportion to the plot size because whilst your picture shows it's linear, they've squeezed them on so much they've actually gone at an angle because really any layperson would realise that there simply isn't space to fit two houses. So we've had 10 or 11 applications now. It went to the parish council. They thought it was grossly inappropriate, and it's probably worth reminding yourself by reading their report on it. It went to this chamber where, again, it was refused, and then appealed to whatever department at the national level said, OK, you may just squeeze one house in. Why it's come to have two houses when it was looked at for one is open to debate. When this council looked at it, it was contrary to the National Policy Framework and Policy HS7 of the Chorley Local Plan 2012 to 2026. I'd imagine that may still apply. But to state the obvious, it simply doesn't fit. You're looking at an angle. Please look at the plan from above. It's got them on at an angle where every other house has a linear parallel part to the road because it doesn't fit two houses, simple as that. The access, the applicant has put it going through an existing gatehouse. That is not a gatehouse. It's never been a gatehouse, never was a gatehouse, still isn't a gatehouse. It's a double garage. The applicant has smashed through the middle of it, smashed through the back wall, and is calling it a gatehouse because there's no space for access to it. So it is not a gatehouse. Someone smashed through the middle of a double garage, and you need to see it for what it is on that. There's a main gas provision just outside. Again, that's why they can't get access. The next door neighbours put a big earth bank because they're so worried about cars coming round on that dangerous bend. There's no room for two houses. So please, would you look at the plan again for me? Environmentally, the developer chopped down all of the native old species trees and then put and submitted a plan to state to you that there were none there. That's a fraudulent, dishonest document. If this was a court of law, on the basis of that dishonesty, all of the application would be withdrawn. It is a false document. It needs to be looked at as such. There were oak trees, there were bats and owls in there, and those trees were chopped down. To then put a report in to say that there are no... Is that 3 minutes? Okay, sorry. Is totally untrue and it needs to be addressed. Fine, thanks.
Yes, please. Thanks, Chair. I just want to remind members that they need to concentrate their deliberations on the merits of the scheme. Whilst the trees may have been removed from the site, I'm not aware that there's been any breach of tree preservation order rules, and therefore it's comments about dishonesty are something that should be disregarded by this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Have I got Alistair, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adele, for those comments. I agree that the Planning Committee should not have any regard to those issues around non-planning issues. I have taken note of the claims of dishonesty. I take them seriously. Myself and my colleagues take our responsibilities professionally very seriously. We always seek to work collaboratively with local authority colleagues. We've done so in Chorley Borough for more than 30 years, and we've sought to do so in this case. Following the previous refusal, we advised the applicants to look to address the key issues and concerns raised by members rather than rush to an appeal. That's in line with government guidance and good practice generally. We carefully reviewed the recording and transcript of the previous meeting to identify those key issues, which can be summarised as the height and scale of the dwellings, 3 floors of accommodation with roofs in the previously steep, tall, pitched roof, local character and context, and a possible preference for render as opposed to brick. What was agreed by committee was that the site should be recognised as being an infill within the village. That is, it is physically, visually and functionally part of the built-up settlement. The proposed dwellings are contained fully within a developed frontage and would not extend at that frontage. The first 2 issues around height and the roof accommodation have been addressed completely by removing those rooms and floor space within the roof and providing a lower roof pitch and height. That change has tangible benefits in reducing the perceived scale and mass of the development, with the overall building heights now consistent with surrounding buildings. As was shown on the street scene, the falling site topography also assists and results, we consider, with a layout that's consistent with and complementary to the context. Such a development will be easily assimilated into the street scene. Points 3 and 4, covering context and impact, overlap and boil down to design aspects. The immediate context is a consolidated developed frontage. There are more sporadic linear developments to the north, but the application site is fully contained. The whole area is characterised by a varied mix of house types, sizes, form, layout and orientation, and design. There are traditional, suburban and more modern design styles. As some members pointed out previously, Bluestone Lane is generally more urbanised now than it was several decades ago. Notwithstanding this mixed context of houses, the applicant feels strongly that traditional design and brick is preferred, but if the committee feel that the use of render or part render is to be considered a better option, that is something they are open to and could be dealt with by condition. Overall, we now consider the scale, form, design and setback layout provide a proposal which is sensitive to its context and which has hopefully addressed the key concerns of the committee. The officer report identifies no policy conflict and no harm whatsoever arising from the proposals, and the application of a neutral planning balance indicates that permission should be granted. I'd like to thank officers and the committee for their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to look at this application as presented in terms of planning policy and framework, and I will disregard the comments as suggested by Adele, so thank you for that. I am happy that it's an infill. That's been proven by the planning inspector. I'm really pleased to see that the applicant has gone away and listened to the comments by committee, and I welcome that and thank you for doing that. I think this is a good example of partnership working. I had no issues with it last time. I certainly don't have any issues with it at all this time, and I'm happy to propose officer recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker, Councillor Southern.
Thanks, Chair. I know this site very well. There's a reference made from Adele to it's on a bend, and the resident made a reference to it on the bend. I think it's next to a bungalow that was a bungalow that's been converted into a pair of semis. My concern would be the Highway Authority have not objected. I assume that people will be able to get out forwards rather than anything. But I just wonder, in view of the concerns expressed locally, Chair, whether we could go and have a look at this on a site visit and see whether we share the concerns about infill and green belt and so on and so forth. I think if it was approved for one, that was fine on appeal. The agent has highlighted the things that they've done, etc., which I accept. But I do think it might be worthwhile having a look at this particular site. It's on a bend that's quite serious.
Adele, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just want to remind members that prior to the refusal of the previous application, members did undertake a site visit and have visited the site. I can confirm that there's adequate space within the curtilage of each of the plots to turn a vehicle and manoeuvre within the site to enter and leave the site in forward gear. And that, you know, and again, Lancashire County Council haven't objected to it. Just in terms of the infill position, I just want to make it clear that the inspector accepted that it was an infill plot, and by definition an infill plot in our own local plan allows for up to 2 dwellings. So it doesn't necessarily restrict it to a single dwelling being an infill plot.
Thank you. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Derbyshire.
I accept the fact that it's classed as infill. That's fairly straightforward. In terms of its scale, size, and is it appropriate infill, I don't deem it to be so. I know the area very, very well. I know that corner well. I must have travelled around it 1,000 times. It did start as one property as it's morphed into two, and it's the fact it's morphed into two that I don't think it's particularly appropriate. There seems to be a complete disregard for anything that the parish council and indeed the residents have said there. That said, the issues around highway safety do concern me and always have done. As has been pointed out with that the proposed gatehouse, there was a rusty saw on that roof for months, and every time I came around that bend, which I've done on numerous occasions, my eye was drawn to it. Do I really want to be looking at the time when I'm coming around a hairpin bend? Not particularly. Do I think the clock's appropriate? Not particularly. That said, my issue again with highways is, and particularly on the construction side of this, the site management of that. There's a site management plan, obviously comes for construction traffic to be put forward on that. Looking at that site there, and bearing in mind, I remember when they took the fill away and they used a high-up, it brought that area of Mawdesley to a standstill. I'm not seeing how that's going to be able to operate as a construction site and not keep vehicles on the road. Now, LCC are of the opinion that that is actually the case and that there won't be any parking on the road. I would suggest that that is for the birds. I've worked construction sites for many, many years, and I've looked at the size of that site, and I'll tell you now, there will be pandemonium on that corner, and it's an accident waiting to happen. Again, that's an opinion. That said, my concern with the construction is the drainage aspect of it. Now, it's been suggested that there will be a drainage plan there. I would suggest there's been no drainage plan put forward other than the sketch that they put forward, which is effectively to take off the surface water from the houses and put it via pipework into a soakaway. I've seen no evidence of a porosity test. I've seen no evidence of any flow ratings or anything else of that sort. There's mention of the fact that the driveway and the hard standing to the front may well be a porous type concrete block. I've seen no evidence in the drawings put forward that there's any type of drainage to the side of that. So I would ask planning, have we actually got anything for that in terms of where that surface water is going to be taken to? All very well saying it's going to be a porous concrete block, but where's that water going to? Because from what I can see, it's going straight into the main highway. And if it's going straight into the main highway, there's only one place that's going to end up, and that's in the middle of Dark Lane in the dip. Now, Dark Lane is prone to flooding. So what I'm saying with this proposal from my aspect is, I'm asking planning, do we have anything in terms of any reference, any tests, any results, any data at all in terms of the planning aspect on that, in terms of the drainage aspect?
Adele.
As part of the assessment of any planning application, all applications are reviewed by United Utilities, and drainage plans have been submitted with the application. Ultimately, it's a small-scale development. The drainage aspects have been considered by the inspector at outline stage. It's not of a size and scale that it would be referred to the lead local flood authority. At this moment in time, everything that's submitted is available to view online, and the recommendation is what it is. It is recommended for approval with the submitted evidence. We wouldn't expect that level of information to be submitted with such a small scale development. There is a condition as well, because I know you did mention you was concerned about the construction. There is a condition requiring a construction management plan, and members will be mindful that guidance is clear, that planning application shouldn't be refused where mitigation can be carried out through the imposition of conditions. So there is a construction management plan condition.
Yeah, I'm well aware of the construction plan condition. What I'm saying is, would that be heavily enforced?
Is that a question?
Yeah, question, sorry, Chair. How would we enforce that management
Well,
plan? I've seen the proposals for that, and I've seen the 5 metres of tarmac. It's a 10mm space between the road and the actual
if
building.
you'd let the officer answer, it might help.
I'm not clear what you mean about how it would be enforced. I mean, our enforcement protocol is set out as a policy of the council, and it's quite clear what the expectation is. If we received complaints that the development was being carried out and the condition hadn't been discharged, then we would investigate it. I would expect, given that the agent acting for the applicant is a very reputable planning consultant, I would anticipate that the advice to the client would be to ensure that all precedent conditions are formally discharged. I don't see anything before me to suggest that that wouldn't happen. So if it does need to be investigated as a breach, then obviously the council and the local planning authority would investigate it.
Okay. Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Derbyshire.
I think, listening to both sides of the argument and having read the information, I think my initial concern again was the two houses. Why the two houses? You know, one was suitable, and now they've squeezed out two, and that is my concern. And it's just, and I've heard all the arguments and everything else, but it is a concern, and I think it should be looked on as a concern because, you know, things were in place for one house, and that would have been fine. But now they've eked it out and put two in there, and no, to me that is a worry and a concern.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to the debate. What brings to my mind paragraph 26 on page 114, that the proposed dwellings are positioned to face the highway and will be set back, and it goes on to say about set within plots of a similar size to other plots in the locality. Page 115, paragraph 28, that I take on board in terms of the reasons that we refuse the two dwellings. Obviously, the applicant has addressed those in that paragraph. And reduce the scale, etc., change the design, and it is a judgment call, but permission has been granted on appeal for one dwelling. It's now a judgment about whether two dwellings on that, and all the evidence, in my mind, would say that it falls that it is appropriate on that site, two dwellings. For those reasons. I also would take note of paragraph 30 of the report, saying it wouldn't have a significant detrimental impact on the area. But just to re-emphasise as well the point that Councillor Southern made about drainage, in terms of what has been said, United Utilities reviewed the statement and found in effect no problem. It's a judgment call, but they're the professionals. So with that, Chair, I understand, I think Councillor Hilton, proposed it, yeah. I'll second the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Hilton, you want to come back?
Yeah, I just want to say, I cannot see any valid planning reason to refuse this application. Okay, so we need to be very careful about the decision making we're making here. If we try and refuse this, we need valid reasons to do so. And I cannot see one in this application, a valid reason to refuse it. Adele has made very clear the situation with the infill. It's well within the council's policy and framework that we can have two dwellings within the infill. The officer report is very clear. If we refuse this and it goes to appeal, I do not believe we have any grounds to fight that appeal. So I would urge members to be very careful in the decision making in this committee this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. And can we try not to comment when members are making their points, please? Councillor Derbyshire.
On nearly every planning committee I have sat on, I have heard this same argument that we can't really refuse it because it'll go to appeal and get approved on appeal. And like I said, that's a judgment call, and you know, I'm making a judgment, which is what I'm allowed to do. And it's just like last time we had exactly the same. We went through lots of people telling us that that literally, why don't we just approve it? Because it basically, it'll go through on appeal. Is that going to be the case for everything that comes before us now? That if anybody objects or it then goes to appeal, we'll have to approve it in case we lose money?
Adele.
Yeah, I'll just take the opportunity to remind members that all planning applications fall to be determined against the provisions of the development plan and any other material planning considerations. It is a judgment call in a lot of cases, but if members are unhappy with the proposal, there needs to be conflict with the development plan and a degree of harm demonstrated. And I just wanted to remind members of that. Thank you.
I've had a proposer and a second. I had a proposal for the site visit. Nobody seconded it. Proposer and seconded for officer recommendation. And I'm going to move to the vote, please. All those in favour of the officer recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve the application, subject to conditions.
Okay, anybody who's come for that application, if they would like to go now, please feel free. Right. Thank you. Moving on, item 3F, Mediterranean at Robin Hood, Bluestone Lane, Mawdesley, places 142 to 180. Adele's presenting this item. The officer recommendation planning permission granted subject to conditions. I have two registered speakers, objector Ian Clayton and the agent Claire Wilkinson. Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the demolition of the existing building and the erection of 5 dwelling houses with associated and ancillary works. Members may recall that a previous proposal was approved by committee that involved the retention and conversion of parts of the former public house. The proposed development differs in that it seeks to replicate the original building rather than convert it, and the appearance of the 4 dwellings to the rear of the site would differ through a more simplified design. The application site comprises the former Mediterranean restaurant building and associated car park. It is located at the junction of Bluestone Lane and Sidbrook Lane within a rural part of Mawdesley and is in the Greenbelt. The application site is previously developed land and the framework and local plan allow for the redevelopment of such sites on the proviso that the development does not have a greater impact on openness. The proposed development would essentially result in a comprehensive redevelopment of this previously developed site, removing all existing buildings and structures. The development would be contained within the previously developed land. Given the current impact of the existing buildings, structures and use of the site, the proposed dwellings would not be materially larger and would not have a greater impact on openness. The development would not therefore constitute inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. The development would enhance the existing qualities of the site and would reflect the rural character of the locality, making a positive contribution to the area. As such, the proposal would be an appropriate design response in the context of the site and locality. There would be no adverse impact on neighbour amenity as a result of the development over and above the previously approved scheme. The off-site works of highway improvement would result in a safer junction layout between Bluestone Lane and Sidbrook Lane, which is a significant benefit of the scheme. In addition, there would be no ecological or drainage impacts, and all details are covered in detail within the committee report. The proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan, and it is recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to you, Ian. Thank you.
First of all, I'm not sure I should be categorised as an objector because basically I have no major objections to the scheme, but I do have some concerns about the design and particularly the way the scheme treats the surface water from the site. As you can see, Sidbrook Lane is a drain. None of the drains in Sidbrook Lane work. Highways will not maintain the ditches. I've requested meetings with them because I own the adjoining land. Can't get them down. When I eventually got them down, they said, we hear what you're saying. We've no money in the budget to clear those ditches. the water from the hard stands in front of the pub, or what was the pub, just come down the road, and Sidbrook Lane has a major flooding problem at the moment. And I can see that the design as it stands at the moment will only make that worse. Secondly, it's a very, very busy corner. And I am concerned that the design as it stands for the entrance is not making that any easier for traffic in that area. And I think, as Councillor Sutton said about the previous application, we talked about construction traffic going in and out of that site will cause a major problem. Just another guide, and I don't know whether anybody's looked at this. Underneath the pub, there is a spring. I would like to know how the developer plans to deal with that spring. So finally, it's a shame the village that had 3 good, well-run pubs now only has 1. 2 of them are a blot on the landscape. This one has been a blot on the landscape. That's why I think in general, I do not disagree in principle with the development.
Okay, thank you. Have I got Claire, please? Thank you. Off you go.
Good evening. Planning permission was previously approved on this site in March 22 by members of this planning committee for the conversion of the former pub to 1 dwelling, along with 4 additional dwellings within the car park to the rear, and this permission remains extant. This current application differs in that the existing building will be rebuilt rather than converted, and the appearance of the 4 dwellings to the rear of the site will be of a more simplified design. There will be no increase in the amount of development on the site than that of the extant permission. The applicant acquired the site with the benefit of the extant permission after undertaking intrusive investigations in preparation for the conversion. This unfortunately revealed a number of issues that would impact on the practicality and viability of converting the building, and hence now the change from its conversion to a new build. Although the proposals now involve the demolition of the pub, the building is not listed nor locally listed, and there are no heritage grounds for preventing the demolition of the building. Visually, the replacement building will replicate the appearance of the pub with minor domestic features added. Fundamentally, the unsightly extensions to the rear of the building will be removed from the site, and the overall impact will improve the appearance of the site in comparison to its present appearance. Regarding the impact of the development upon the Greenbelt, the proposals represent the redevelopment of a previously developed site. The committee report notes that the development as a whole would not have a materially greater impact upon the Greenbelt than that of the existing or the extant permission, and complies with the NPPF in that respect. Like with the extant permission, the existing vehicle access will be retained and adapted to provide direct access to the 4 dwellings at the rear of the site, and a new access will be constructed to serve the dwelling along the site frontage. A significant benefit of this proposed scheme is that highway improvement works are proposed along with a footway, the length of the site frontage, both of which will lead to a safer highway environment at the junction of Sidbrook Lane and Bluestone Lane than that of what exists now. As Mr Clayton has mentioned, he has concerns about the surface water drainage discharge, and some details have been included with the application documents, stating that this would drain into a ditch at the northwest of the site. Notwithstanding this, a planning condition has been suggested which will require more details of this surface water drainage scheme, and the applicant is accepting of this. Neighbouring residential amenity will be maintained, and ecological enhancements are proposed through the introduction of bat and bird boxes along with native planting. Overall, therefore, we will contend that the principle of this proposed development is acceptable and visually will replicate the extant permission. The demolition of the pub will not result in the loss of any heritage asset, but instead its replacement will provide a high-quality, sustainable home. We would therefore request that members vote in favour of this planning application being approved. Thank you.
Adele, you wanted to come back.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just mindful that it is a recurring theme that members do have concerns about surface water drainage and construction management issues. And just to reassure members that, again, on this application, there is conditions recommended that require the submission of a detailed sustainable drainage strategy. There is a construction management plan requirement, and with regard to the existence of a spring, if that is actually identified following demolition works, that may mean that there needs to be a further change to the development, and it would be dealt with at that time if there's not a technical solution for it. And again, that would be overseen by the developer and the building control services at the same time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay then. Right, okay. Over to you, members. Councillor Derbyshire, Councillor Southern.
I just wanted to say thank you for that clarification, Adele, because that puts a lot of things into perspective.
Councillor Southern, Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, good scheme. It basically takes what's effectively a derelict eyesore and turns it into a decent development. I do take issue with the drainage, unfortunately, only because I know the area very well. What we failed to point out is actually adjacent to that, on the side of Sidbrook Lane where the drainage ditch is, there's a water pumping station and an electrical substation. And whilst we've got runoff from the existing concrete car park there, whilst I'm okay with this, the item we made in Article 3 there in terms of our plan for drainage, that would be my only stipulation. We've got to be looking at this sustainable drainage thing. And I'm sorry to keep harping on about it, but ultimately it's my inbox that gets walloped when everyone gets flooded. But apart from that, I'm cool with it. Thank you.
Just going off at tangent a little bit, and I am mindful that it is a concern of members, I have arranged for training later in the year that the Lead Local Flood Authority will be attending to provide some training for members on it and some additional information. Thank you.
Councillor Whittaker.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite catch everything that Adele said about drainage then.
There's some training coming later in the year.
There's what?
Training. Later in the, yeah.
I see, right. Sorry, I thought you said
okay.
drainage. I have a comment on the application, Chair. We went on a site visit not too long ago. Pretty large car park at the back of the Robin Hood. Strange that it's still called the Mediterranean. But anyway, we went on the site visit and we gave permission for the houses. And then I've subsequently had correspondence with residents about the issue of water and outflow onto Sidbrook Lane. It's named because Sidbrook is like a ditch alongside Sidbrook Lane that runs to Croston, where there are now major issues in regard to flooding in Croston as well. So it's a question of, I don't think we can argue about the principle of the houses, but we are concerned, everybody's concerned about it down there at that junction. It's a tricky junction. LCC, whether they won't clear the ditch out or whether it's environmentally they don't want to do it or it's awkward, I don't know. But I think if Adele gives us reassurance that that drainage situation and the spring will be identified, which Mr. Clayton has identified to me, whether it was capped or whether it will be uncapped when the demolition takes place. I think it's a shame that the Robin Hood pub itself is going to get knocked down, because that was part of the it's part of my early drinking places actually, but that's by the by. That's not a planning application, Chair, a planning reason. But I think if we get this thing, and the resident has made the issue very clear that it puts the onus on officers to satisfy themselves that it's not going to make things worse just down Bluestone Lane, where there are residences along that Bluestone Lane, 2 or 3 residents fairly close to that junction. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Adele, do you want to come?
Only to refer Councillor Whittaker to the condition 3 that's recommended in the report, that requires the information to be provided, to be assessed and to be reviewed by the technical experts.
Okay.
Can that be advised to the nearby residents?
Through you, Chair, again, we wouldn't notify residents about the submission of an application for a condition discharge, but what residents can do, they can sign up to the website and be alerted to any new activity on applications in the vicinity, and all applications are published online on the council's website.
Good. Sorry, does that exclude dumbos like me getting information like that, or what?
All members get a weekly list sent via email of all the applications that have been submitted.
And that will be included in that weekly list.
If an application is submitted for an application discharge, it'll be on that list, yeah.
Okay. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I did go on the site visit, and I don't really have a problem, apart from the fact that it is a dangerous junction, but there must have been an awful lot more traffic with a pub there and a restaurant than 5 properties. The pub isn't listed. It's a shame it's been knocked down, but it isn't listed. And obviously, as long as local councillors' concerns about the flood issue can be addressed in conditions, I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendation and propose it.
Thank you, Councillor France. Somebody needs to formally second that for me, please.
I'll second that proposition.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application for planning permission subject to conditions.
And we move on to item 3G, where Councillor Hilton said there was an objection. That's the word I was looking for. And if anybody else wishes to leave before we discuss that, that's fine. Over the page. Sir. We'll crack on with that. So, item 3G is Coppull Enterprise Centre Mill Lane, Coppull, pages 181 to 206. Adele's going to present this item. The officer recommended planning permission granted subject to conditions, and I have one registered speaker, the applicant Paul Clark. Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application site is located within the settlement of Coppull at the northern end of Mill Lane. It's occupied by a Grade 2 listed building known as Coppull Enterprise Centre and is adjacent to the Red Herring Public House, which is also Grade 2 listed. The application seeks planning permission for a number of items. Essentially, these include the widening of the existing ground floor fire doors on the northern elevation, the installation of an external staircase on the northern elevation, the erection of an approximately 2.5 metre high security fence along the southern boundary of the site facing towards Mill Lane and along the eastern site boundary, the erection of a sliding access gate and the creation of new car parking spaces and formation of a new car park hard standing. It was unusual that minor works such as these would be submitted to committee, and the reason the application is before you is because it is a major application simply because of the site area of the mill rather than the nature of the proposed works. I would also like to give you a verbal update that in addition to the one representation that is detailed in the committee report, there is a second representation that has been submitted in objection to the proposal. The key considerations in respect of the consideration of this application relate to its potential for impacting on the heritage asset and whether the proposed development would harm the significance of the Grade 2 listed buildings. It's accepted that there is a clear need for the proposed works for the purposes of fire safety to ensure that the second and third floors of the building are suitable for modern day uses. Given that the shape of the window openings would remain and the works would be reversible, it is accepted that this element of the proposal has been suitably justified. Given the already eroded nature of the setting to the listed building and its limited or neutral importance, it is considered that the car park and fencing proposals would have no adverse impact on the contribution made by the setting on the significance of the two heritage assets, and it is considered that the proposal meets the statutory test of the Act to preserve and is acceptable in design terms. An amended site plan has been submitted showing the proposed fence would be located 2 metres away from the adjacent carriageway to the south of the site, and that the proposed gate would be more than 5 metres away from the carriageway to maintain adequate sight lines from the vehicular access to the site. The local highway authority has reviewed the amended plans and have stated that they do not have any objections. Members will note that it is recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions, but I would just like to add an additional condition that requires the submissions of details for the actual fence itself. Although we've got a broad indication of its height and its location, we haven't actually got the details of the type of the fence. So I'm recommending that an additional condition is imposed to detail the type of the fence so that we don't end up with a palisade and it is more of a paladin type fence. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Paul, would you like to speak now, please?
Hello, I am the owner of Coppull Mill. It's a fantastic building and it's a valuable provider of good quality, affordable office and workspace for all different types of sectors of business and leisure. It's 180,000 square foot, over 4 floors. It was previously owned by Lancashire Corporation, and during this tenure, the corporation split the 2 ground floors into smaller units, which now house 90 businesses in various different business and leisure sectors. So Coppull Mill is a success in providing affordable business accommodation within the area, providing services and employment. I have daily inquiries for small units on site, but we don't have the space because we've got 2 empty floors. So the planning I've submitted today is to sympathetically split the 2 upper floors into putting a large corridor area in with lots of light into the corridor areas, so it's sympathetic. A new 27-man goods lift will provide access to the upper floor space, which is what's required. An external staircase, which was there in the past, so it's in keeping with how it was built years ago. The car park is a mess and is not attractive to tenants at the moment, so a number of people park on the road. The planning permission will address these issues by providing over 165 car parking spaces, more than is needed on the site, and it would be landscaped, which again will help improve the appearance of the mill site. To conclude, the majority of tenants I have are entrepreneurs who need affordable space to start their business ideas into reality. Most stay on to stay and grow within the mill, employing local people. Those who go on to build bigger businesses then move to larger premises within the area. Therefore, without these fantastic mill buildings, which need to be adapted to local needs, there is a shortage of affordable industrial accommodation to allow this to happen. Coppull Mill is, like I said, 180,000 square foot, 60,000 square foot remains empty. The planning permission will allow this place to be used by local businesses.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lowe, over to you, members. He was quicker than me.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation. I take paragraph 7. The Council's Heritage Advisor has said it's acceptable in design terms and that it's met the statutory test. The Parish Council have said that the plans are appropriate. Lancashire County Highways, they don't have any problems with it. And I presume that the amended condition, the additional condition, takes account of Network Rail's concerns that they need to agree things. So with that, Chair, with no technical objections, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor France, Councillor Southern.
Quite happy to second Councillor Hall's proposal for taking the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. No problems with this, Chair. It's a good use of what was existing textile mill. What small businesses want, small, easier outlets, and no problem at all with it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve the application subject to the conditions in the report and the further conditions proposed by the Planning Services Manager regarding fencing.
Thank you. Item 4 is the appeals report. Adele. Sorry? Oh, yeah. She's got to borrow mine.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of appeals reported on here, you'll know, and particularly just draw your attention to the number of enforcement appeals. I don't want to mention anything specifically, but if anybody has got any questions, then I'm happy to answer any queries you may have.
Councillor G.
Move the report, Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. I have no urgent items. So with that, thank you for your attendance and have a safe journey home. Thank you.